Friends, welcome to Holy Trinity Catholic Church, where we believe, belong, and become. The words of Jesus from the cross. It is finished. Death is finished. On the Good Friday of the Lord's Passion, we celebrate the mystery of Jesus entering into the realm of death. But death is finished. Jesus isn't finished. We see three different phases of Jesus: the suffering servant, the great high priest, and the triumphant king. Suffering servant, the great high priest, and the triumphant king. This is the king who says from the cross, "It is finished. Death is finished." There are two darknesses in the scriptures. One at the beginning of creation. There was darkness all over. And God said, "Let there be light." And the second darkness in the scriptures is when Jesus died on the cross. There was darkness in the world. But this original darkness in the Genesis eventually gave way to sin of humanity. But the darkness that happened at the death of Christ between the sixth and the ninth hour gave way to the light. My God, why have you forsaken me? God's response: I will give you the most staggering light of all, which is the resurrection, the light of life. There are two movements, if we can see in the Gospels. Nicodemus, who comes to Jesus at night, because in Jesus he saw the light. But there was also Judas, who, after living with the light, he chooses darkness, ends his life. On this Good Friday, we recognize that Jesus has conquered sin, death, and darkness to give us eventually the most staggering, brilliant, luminous light of life, the resurrection. But for that to happen, the cross becomes the axis mundi, the center of the universe. In the suffering servant, Jesus lowered himself to be exalted. It is his blood that is put on the doorposts. It is his blood that is offered. Through his suffering, this servant will justify many people, you and me, perhaps living in darkness. Through his death, he will justify and lead us into that wonderful light of life, of resurrection. That is why Jesus becomes the Passover. The cross becomes the bridge from the abyss of darkness into the wonder and the light of life, which is the resurrection. And this Christ becomes the high priest. On this day, we behold the wood of the cross, the body of Jesus battered, but we look beyond it to the dignity of the high priest, the victim Christ. Garbed in his wounds, the ornate vestments of this liturgical celebration point us to the altar of the cross, altar of life, leading us, putting us on an upward trajectory into light, into life, into resurrection. For that to happen, Jesus becomes the Passover, the bridge from darkness of sin to the light of life and resurrection. And Jesus on the cross is not a king who is lost. He becomes the triumphant king, the conquering king. His crucifixion is an enthronement When the Son of Man is lifted up on the cross, he will draw all people to himself. Why? To life, to the light of life, from the darkness of sin. His crucifixion becomes the enthronement, lifted high on the cross, becomes the exaltation. He was not a conquered king, but a conquering king, a king who conquers the darkness of death and sin. Therefore, Jesus becomes the Passover. It is said Jesus lived 3 years of public life. He was 3 hours on the cross and 3 days in the tomb. Why? To lead us from darkness of sin to the light of life, to the resurrection. And as we celebrate the Good Friday of the Lord's Passion, we reflect and meditate on the passion of Jesus, his death on the cross, his salvific death, his redemptive death, leading us from the darkness of sin into the light of life. Cross becomes the axis mundi, the center, the crux of the universe. The cross from which he cries out, "It is finished. Death is finished. Jesus is not finished." He is leading us to the light of life, upward and onward to the resurrection. Father Praveen Lakiseti, here at Holy Trinity Catholic Church in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you and God bless.